This is going to be the finale of the OSCP Journey series. In this video, I'm going to make it pretty comprehensive. I'm going to start from the very beginning, go through all my learning resources, go through the PWK experience, and also talk about my 2 exam attempts, leading to the final one where I passed with 80 points. So first of all, what is the OSCP and why would you consider this certification? Well, it's a pretty well-respected certification in pen testing. Anyone who's serious about pen testing should be getting the certification. It's kind of like an industry standard at this point, where at the moment, most of the people that I work with have the OSCP or is going for the OSCP. And it's pretty much listed as a requirement for almost every pen testing job that you're going to come across. It's a practical hands-on certification where you actually have to be on the keyboard hacking into machines. This is probably the most hardest certification that I have ever done. And people love to ask this question is, will this certification get you a job? Now, because of all the factors that I've mentioned above, I think the OSCP is the certification that is actually the closest to guaranteeing you a job compared to all the other certifications out there. One, because it's so well known and respected in the industry. And second of all, because the practical hands-on skills that you have to obtain before you get the OSCP, people don't really put too much caveats on it. OSCP, if you have the OSCP, you're definitely going to get interviews, and then assuming you go through the job interview fine, you're pretty much guaranteed an entry-level pen testing role. And I saw this comment someone made on Reddit about whether the OSCP is going to get you a job. He said, if you're going to try as hard to get a job as you tried passing the exam itself, then you're pretty much going to have no trouble getting a job. So yes, it's definitely worth going for this certification if you want to become a pen tester. I myself actually landed my first pen testing job before I even passed the OSCP. So I was almost through all my prep for the OSCP, and then I managed to land my first pen testing job. So that kind of really speaks to the value and the impact of having OSCP on your CV. So here is my timeline of studying for the OSCP. I started in July of 2020. And when I started on TryHackMe that time, I didn't actually think that I would be pursuing the OSCP. I thought it was a pretty fun platform to learn cybersecurity, and I wanted to just test the waters to see if this stuff interested me in the first place. And I pretty much got hooked once I went on TryHackMe and did a couple of their exercises. After 6 months on the TryHackMe platform, I moved on to Hack the Box, where I was doing a lot of the boxes with the walkthrough, because obviously I was 6 months in. I still didn't really know what I was doing at that time. So reading walkthroughs and doing the boxes on TryHackMe and also Hack the Box really helped me go past that initial learning curve, especially TryHackMe. I have made videos mentioning TryHackMe in the past. It's great for the beginner if you want to jump in, just to test the waters, just to see if you like this kind of stuff. So if you like it, I think you'll get hooked on it straight away. If you don't, then I guess you don't, but you can give it a try. I really recommend it for beginners. So after Hack the Box, I went on to Offensive Security Proving Grounds. I would say this is probably the best practice for the OSCP exam, because the boxes on there mirror the exam machines quite well in terms of both difficulty and the various quirks that you'll find in those machines. People say Proving Grounds is probably the best practice for the OSCP, and I tend to agree with that statement. After that, I moved on to Virtual Hacking Labs. That is another platform that is recommended a lot by people doing OSCP prep. I would say the highlight of Virtual Hacking Labs is the Linux machines and the various ways that you can get initial shell on those machines. They really demonstrate a real wide variety of ways for that initial access. So if that's something that you're weak on, then definitely Virtual Hacking Labs, highly recommended. After that, I went on to CyberSec Labs. This one isn't as well known as some of the other platforms, but a highlight of this platform is Windows privilege escalation, because they have very nice Windows machines that I haven't actually seen on other platforms before, and they're not really comparable because they keep it really simple and they keep it pretty much in line with what you may encounter in the OSCP exam. And finally, after all that, I enrolled in the PWK Labs in August 2021, and that was when I actually started documenting this OSCP journey on my YouTube channel. So you can pretty much watch my videos on that if you're interested in my experience on the PWK Labs. And you probably know this already, I took the exam in October last month and then I failed with 60 points. I got pretty close on that exam attempt and I ended up just not passing because I made some stupid mistakes that I probably should have avoided on that first exam attempt. But that experience was really useful for my second exam attempt, which I took just last weekend. And I got my results back on the Monday of this week, and that was a success. So after a year, about a year and a half almost of practice, I finally passed the certification. It was a hell of a journey, and I really learned a ton through this. And as a bit of a background, between January and March of 2021, I actually had the opportunity to do a couple of internal Active Directory penetration tests. So during that time, I also took off on a bit of a tangent to learn Active Directory and that whole suite of pen testing methodology. Just going through TryHackMe and Hack the Box for about 6 months or so, learning the Active Directory methodology was pretty easy. I picked it up pretty easily and I was actually able to perform some pretty good tests with fairly limited knowledge at that time, I believe. And based on that experience, plus all the prep that I have done for the OSCP, I put all that on my CV and I actually landed a pen testing job in July of this year. I essentially put on my CV that I have done all this prep for the OSCP. I was ready to get in there and enroll right away for the OSCP and have a go at it. And that really impressed my employer and they were happy to take me on. I'm not sure if you can credit this to the OSCP getting me a job or not, but I followed this study prep because I was thinking I wanted to go for the OSCP. It forces you to actually go down these journeys and actually stick to something for a long period of time. And definitely studying for this, if there wasn't a goal at the end for me, I probably wouldn't have stuck to this timeline as well as I did. So definitely OSCP deserves credit for that. And a bit of a more detailed list if you want to have a list of boxes to hit. So this is a list by TJNull and he lists all the machines from Hack the Box, Proving Grounds, Vuln Hub, where they are very similar to the kind of things that you need to know for the OSCP exam. Now, you obviously don't have to solve all the machines on this list. This is more of a list you can refer to if you want more of a checklist that you can methodologically work through. I thought this list was pretty good and I will share a link to this in the video description below. I think I actually ended up doing more boxes than what was on this list, but it's totally up to you depending on your skill set and where you're at, how many boxes you do on this list, but it's a pretty good reference for you to check back. And another thing I'll mention is the buffer overflow prep room on TryHackMe. I did a video on this channel of solving one of the exercises of this room. Buffer overflow is really easy on the OSCP exam. It's probably the most easiest 25 points that you're going to get in the exam. It's very methodological. Follow the step-by-step approach. If you do it a couple of times, it should probably take you half an hour to an hour max to do the buffer overflow on the exam. So don't be intimidated by the buffer overflow. Just watch my video if you're stuck on that. Go through this room a couple of times before your exam and you should be totally fine. Here is a ranking of all the resources in terms of how useful they were. Proving Grounds obviously ranked number 1. The boxes are made by Offensive Security themselves. They mirror the exam machines very well. So definitely number 1 resource, Proving Grounds. Just one thing I'll mention in Proving Grounds is you don't have to do the community rated hard or very hard machines. You can keep it below that. The more difficult machines on there are out of scope for the OSCP and they're catered more towards the more advanced certifications from Offensive Security. Number 2, Virtual Hacking Labs. Great Linux machines on there. The only downside to it is most of the privilege escalation is kernel exploits, but the initial shell methods, they show a wide variety, so really good practice if you're weak in that. CyberSec Labs, the best practice, the best Windows machines that you'll find that mirrors the privilege escalation methods that you may find in the OSCP exam. They also have really great Active Directory labs on there, by the way, as well. That is out of scope for the OSCP, but really good practice. So CyberSec Labs, great Windows machines. Number 4 is Try Hack Me. I only ranked it 4th because it doesn't apply directly to the OSCP as well as some of the other learning resources, but definitely I have to give credit for getting me into this pen testing path in the first place. Great for beginners. Start on Try Hack Me if you're new, because some of the other platforms are probably a bit advanced if you want to jump onto it straight away. And Hack the Box, I ranked last because it's a hit and miss with Hack the Box, I think. Don't get me wrong, the Hack the Box, they have great machines on there and you learn a lot from Hack the Box. But the problem with Hack the Box, I think, is it kind of brings you down these very niche exploits that are either out of scope for the OSCP or too CTF-like to be applicable to the OSCP. You'll learn some great stuff on Hack the Box, but the knowledge that you get from Hack the Box is probably not as directly applicable to the OSCP exam. So I would recommend doing some machines on Hack the Box. I would add another note on Hack the Box is IPSec videos. I'll talk about that in a bit. So some bonus material that you can look into. Tiberius has great Windows and Linux privilege escalation courses on Udemy. They are pretty much designed exactly to pass the OSCP. So look into that if you're weak in privilege escalation. Another thing you can look into is Paul Swigger's Web Academy, especially in the sections for SQL injection. They have really nice labs to practice your manual SQL injection. Going through the SQL injection labs on Paul Swigger brought my manual SQL injection level to a level that I was comfortable with, because you're not allowed to use SQL map in the OSCP exam because you cannot use any auto exploit tools. So if you're weak in SQL injection, definitely go on Paul Swigger and do the materials on there. Next, you've got IPSec videos on YouTube. So IPSec does really good walkthroughs on Hack the Box machines. If you actually take Hack the Box plus IPSec videos, I would probably rank Hack the Box as a more useful resource, possibly more higher up on my list. Because the thing I like about IPSec videos is he goes through a really nice methodology where you can actually pick up a lot of tips and tricks in his videos. So YouTube videos, IPSec plus Hack the Box. And also you should join the InfoSec Prep Discord channel and check out the OSCP subreddit as well. They have really good resources in there. You can kind of meet people who are going through the same journey and talk to each other, help each other solve boxes. Really good way to keep motivated through this whole process. There's actually a channel in the InfoSec Prep Discord called OSCP Pass Fail Experiences, where I thought was pretty useful because people post their exam results and then try to figure out what they did wrong or correctly to pass the exam. I sort of just browse that once in a while, and I did pick up some nice tips in there I used as well. And obviously this is a question I get asked a lot, is how you should prep for the OSCP. Well, it really comes down to where your skill is at this point. If you're an absolute beginner, for example, you're coming across from a different industry, you have zero IT knowledge, you want to become a pen tester, you want to get into cybersecurity, I would recommend you start on TryHackMe and do that platform for 6 to 12 months. That really guides you from absolutely zero knowledge to a level where you can actually start to move on to other platforms. It literally teaches you from the beginning, like typing simple commands into Bash. So don't be afraid to jump in there and have a play. It's really catered towards the beginner. You can take on these small modules and really go through them in a bite-sized approach that is quite easy to digest. For the beginner, I would consider myself a beginner when I started this whole journey, is 3 to 6 months on TryHackMe, Proving Grounds, Virtual Hacking Labs, CyberSec Labs, and Hack the Box with IPSec videos. Pretty much this whole journey that I went on, I would recommend it to anyone who's got a little bit of IT experience, they want to get the OSCP. This is probably a good way to go. It does take a fair bit of time to get through all this, so you kind of need to consider if you need to go through all this stuff to pass the exam. If you are more intermediate, I think Proving Grounds plus Virtual Hacking Labs, you're good to go. If you're more advanced, you've worked in IT for a while, you can probably get away with just Proving Grounds, and then you can sign up for the PWK Labs straight away after that. A thing to keep in mind through this whole process of solving machines is you have to keep good notes. Keep a note of your enumeration checklist, all your scripts, common ports and exploits. And the most important thing is you need to develop your hacking methodology. Keeping good notes and actually developing your notes as you solve boxes is a great way to develop your methodology. Make sure that your notes are actually useful, that you are actually referring back to your notes when you're solving new machines. That's kind of like a good way to gauge whether your notes are useful or not, because you should find yourself often checking back into your notes for a particular command, for a particular exploit that you've used in the past. If you're checking back into your notes, that means they're useful. If they're not useful, then reorganize it, cut down the useless things in your notes, and just keep it very simple but very useful. And people have asked whether I would release my notes. I don't think that is actually a great idea, because honestly, it's not gonna make too much sense to you if I just give you my notes. Taking other people's notes doesn't actually give you any advantage at all, I would say. There are actually plenty of cheat sheets for the OSCP online already. You just have to search for it. Even if you had other people's notes, I don't think that actually is going to be too useful to you, because you're going to have to go through those notes and learn all that stuff anyway yourself. So a better way to do it is just to learn the stuff and put that into your own notes yourself, so you can refer back to it and everything makes sense to you. Some of the study tips I would just mention is you should read walkthroughs throughout this journey, especially in the beginning when you're fairly new at this. There's really not much point just bashing your head against the wall if you can't solve a box for too long. It's just going to keep you demotivated. So read walkthroughs, get that input, try to learn rather than punish yourself too hard through this whole process. I find reading walkthroughs is fine as long as you have given it a good go. Like for example, if you've tried a box, you couldn't get anywhere in 1 or 2 hours, it's probably fine to read a walkthrough at that point. A small tip that I saw someone post recently is before you look at a walkthrough, go through each port and just write a small note to yourself on each port as to why that is not the way to get into that box. And then once you read the walkthrough, you will get some feedback on why one of your assumptions was incorrect. So that'll be a pretty good way to slowly develop that methodology and your intuition when it comes to hacking into machines. And also experiment and research. Go off onto tangents. For example, I went off on this whole Active Directory pen testing tangent for a couple of months through my journey, and I learned a lot through that. So if you find something interesting, don't be afraid to go off on a tangent, do your own experimentation and research, because this whole journey is about learning. It's not really about passing the exam. I got a job before passing the exam because of the stuff that I learned, not because of the exam. So don't time box yourself on this. Don't say you have to get the OSCP in like 6 months or 3 months. It's kind of like a journey that you go through, and whenever you get it, you get it. So there is really no rush as long as you are learning through this whole journey. So I finally signed up for the PWK Labs in August. I got the 90-day lab access, and you can kind of follow my journey through the video series on this channel from this point onwards. I ended up solving 40 boxes, and I actually quit the labs on day 60 because I didn't find much value doing further boxes on the PWK Labs anymore, mainly because I found them pretty boring and out of date. And at that point, because I did so much practice before that already, I felt fairly comfortable with trying my hand at the exam. So at that point, I pretty much went for my first exam attempt. That was in October. And another note is I did not complete the lab exercises because the lab exercises, they are just way too much work for the 5 extra points that you'll be getting. If you had that time, you'll probably be better served solving more boxes or learning something else altogether. And to be honest, I didn't actually even read the PDF or watch the videos in that much detail. I kind of skimmed through it, so I can't comment too much about how good the PWK material actually is. But to give the OSCP credit, all the prep I've done before that was to prep for the exam. So I don't know what to say about the material. People say it's out of date. I can't comment too much on that, unfortunately. You have to get to it and have a look yourself. Now, the first exam attempt, I made a video on this already, so I won't go through it in too much detail in this video. But as a summary, I got the buffer overflow done. I got the 10-pointer done very quickly on the first day, and then from 4 p.m. onwards I got nothing. So pretty much I was just cycling through the machines. I couldn't find any foothold into any of those machines, mainly because my breaks were too short and I was making some very basic errors, I think. And on the second day at 7 a.m., I pretty much got shell and root on the 25-pointer machine very quickly, but then failed to get any points from that time onwards. So I ended up with 60 points on the first attempt, which I thought was pretty good. You know, I took the exam a month earlier than I actually intended. I still had 30 days of PWK Labs at that point. So I kind of thought that as a trial run, you know, have the experience of the 24-hour exam. That's going to really help you on the next attempts anyway. The intuition that I gained from that attempt, I think that was what helped me pass the second time round. So the second exam attempt started with some technical issues with the proctoring software. I actually received an email from the offensive security team a couple of hours before my exam started saying there were some issues with Firefox that morning, so use a different browser. But I actually checked the various other browsers and none of it was working. So I had to talk to the live chat from offensive security to get it all sorted. But by the time it was sorted, it was already 10 a.m. And when I asked the proctor for a lab extension, they didn't have the authority to actually give me an extension. So at that time, I was a little bit flustered. So it wasn't a great start for me mentally. But I kind of had to calm down and just get it done. I did the buffer overflow within the first hour, just like the first time. And I didn't even scan the other machines before I did the buffer overflow because the start was just so messed up. So I actually started scanning machines after the buffer overflow. I mean, it's not a big deal. People say you have to get your scans in before the buffer overflow, and by the time you finish the buffer overflow, all your scans will be ready. I don't think it's too much of a big deal actually, because honestly 24 hours is a long time, and wasting a little bit of time at the start, on hindsight, it's no big deal. And I think I got a bit lucky on this exam because the 20 pointer I got in this exam is actually the same as the 20 pointer I got in the last exam. So I did kind of redeem myself in this exam attempt, because when I reviewed my notes on the previous exam, I had a feeling that I found the foothold to that machine, and I tested it this time around and it was actually correct. So kind of redeemed myself for that first attempt and confirmed it was indeed a really dumb mistake that made me fail that first attempt. After that, I took a bit of a break and then moved on to the 10 pointer, which was done at 3 p.m. So really on fire at the start, already got 55 points, and it was only about 5 hours into the exam. So I took a bit of a break at that point again. My breaks were about half an hour to an hour long, while the first time it was just only 10 or 15 minutes long. And this time I really felt that ideas started forming in my head as I took the break. So every time I came back from a break, I had an idea to try, and with a couple of tries, the thing actually worked. So not sure if it's luck or some other factor or the intuition that I gained from the first exam attempt, but this time it felt really different. I think maybe because of the fact that I already had the experience of doing the 24-hour exam, so it's no big deal now. I know that there's plenty of time. Even if you mess up, even if you get stuck, there's plenty of time in the 24 hours to correct course and actually find the correct way. I started working on the 25 pointer machine and I was done by 7 p.m. So at this point, I already had 80 points. I took another break and then I double checked all my flags and screenshots. I did try a bit on the last 20 pointer machine. I think I tried about 2 hours on that machine. I didn't get anywhere, and I kind of just wanted to call it at that point. I had the 80 points. I was pretty happy with this exam attempt. I double checked my screenshots and my flags again, make sure they were submitted properly in the exam portal, and then ended my exam at about 10 p.m. For the exam report, I did it the next day. I spent about 4 hours on it. I already had all the screenshots, all the flags were correct. I double checked them on the first day, so it wasn't that painful writing the report. I was pretty used to writing reports anyway from the job. For report writing, I would recommend to keep it simple. Just use Microsoft Word and just smash your stuff in there. If you do decide to use Markdown and all that kind of fancy stuff, a word of warning on that is sometimes you do encounter some strange issues that you don't want to try to troubleshoot on your exam. So for example, one of my coworkers, when he was trying to format his markdown report and convert it into a PDF, there were some formatting issues and his PDF wasn't generating correctly. So that kind of stuff I just wanted to avoid. So just keep it simple, use Microsoft Word, it's fine. So for some exam tips, you should read the updated exam guide on the Offensive Security website. It pretty much takes you through all their requirements, and if you read everything and follow it step by step, you should be fine on the exam. For technical issues that you encounter during your exam, go to the chat.offensivesecurity.com website. It's a 24-hour chat and they will sort you through any proctoring issues with the software. Another tip is have a copy of your ID on your computer in case that they can't see it through the webcam. The proctoring software I would recommend is using Chrome with the Janus WebRTC plugin. So get that installed before your exam. I've heard people have proctoring software crash on Firefox and other browsers. So I've used Chrome. Other people have recommended Chrome as well, so stick to that. I didn't have any major issues apart from that thing in the beginning of my second exam attempt, but I think Chrome is the most stable at this point. And obviously prepare food and drink for your day. Get a good night's sleep. Try not to stress too much about the exam. You are not expected to stay up for the whole 24 hours to pass the exam. If you have to do that, you probably didn't do enough prep for the exam. So do more prep. Don't kill yourself on the exam day. You should probably pass in about 12 to 14 hours if you've done enough prep. More exam tips is take long breaks. That was the key, I think, that made the difference in my second exam attempt. I kind of realized that there is plenty of time to mess up. The biggest limiting factor is when your brain turns slow after you've focused for too long. You want your brain fresh and rested, so take breaks, walk around, jump around a bit, do some burpees, whatever it takes to get that blood flowing, and then you can actually go back and focus on the exam properly with a fresh mind. And this is actually a thing I mentioned in my previous exam experience video, is you have to strike a balance between how wide you enumerate and how deep you dig on a particular vulnerability. For my first exam attempt, I enumerated too quickly without digging deep enough on the particular exploits that I already found. So you have to strike a balance between these two. For this, I think I mentioned in the previous video as well, you kind of need that exam experience to give you an intuition of how offensive security hides those exploits, how wide and how deep you have to enumerate. You kind of need to solve a couple of boxes in the exam, and then you have a pretty good idea of the balance between these two. So I can't really give too much guidance on this one, unfortunately. You'll kind of need to discover it yourself as you go through the exam. And yeah, 24 hours is a long time. Don't stress over the time. You're not going to run out of time. You're going to run out of ideas before you run out of time, or your brain is going to get tired and you're not going to make progress because you're tired. So take long breaks, don't stress. If you can do it, you can pretty much do it. If you can't, go back and do more practice. If you had to stay up 24 hours, you probably didn't prep enough. And about the Metasploit usage, just don't overthink it. If you think that one machine is actually the Metasploit one, then just go ahead and use it. And also don't stress if you waste your Metasploit usage. You can easily pass without Metasploit, so don't overthink the Metasploit usage, and yeah, just use it on a machine that you are the weakest on. And as a final point, actually don't overthink anything in the exam. Trust in your ability. If you've done the prep, gone through this journey, then you should trust yourself that you will find the vulnerability. The exploits in the exam are not going to be super crazy exploits that you have no way of doing because they're too advanced. They're going to be something simple. You are going to be able to do it if you find it and you actually try and do the thing. So trust in your ability. I think a good way of controlling a balance between enumeration and depth is use a timer. So for example, you find a exploit, you set the timer, and then you go for an hour focusing on that one exploit. If you can't exploit it in 1 hour, then you kind of have to trust in your ability that this is not the intended way into the machine, because if it was, then you need to have confidence in your own skill that you would have done it if that was the true path to initial shell or your privilege escalation. So do an hour. If you can't do it in an hour, move on to something completely different and then try 1 hour on that thing again. So this is kind of like a way to artificially strike a balance between enumeration and the depth that you're willing to go on a particular vulnerability. You can kind of play around with that timing based on how well it works for you. You can go for 1 hour, you can go for 2 hours, or you can go for 3 hours. Sort of try and find what is best for you. Use that on a box like on Proving Grounds and see if that actually helps you as you solve the box. If you failed the exam, go back to the list, do more practice. You probably either didn't do enough practice or the mental side of the exam got to you. A huge part of the exam is the mental factor, I think. If you've done the practice and you've still failed, it's definitely the mental factor that got you. On your subsequent attempts, you're going to do much better on the mental side of things. So don't stress, do a bit of practice, and then go for the exam again. You should review your notes after the exam in case that you miss something during the exam. It was definitely the case in my situation where I missed that initial shell on the 20-pointer, which was something really basic that could have made me pass on my first exam attempt. So reviewing that actually helped me do that box extremely quickly on my second exam attempt, which I think is definitely a factor that helped me pass the second time round. And actually, on that note, luck is definitely a factor when it comes to the OSCP exam. I got the same box as last time. I did it really quickly. How much that influenced me passing this time around, I'm not sure, but luck is definitely a factor in terms of what machines you get. Is the exploit for that machine something that gels well with your skill set? Or if it's something that you've completely haven't seen before and you're not going to be able to solve. Another luck factor is which exploits that you try first when you start enumerating a box. You could easily just use the correct exploit on your first try and get it, while someone else probably will go through the whole list, check off everything, and then finally reach that final correct exploit path when their brain is already tired. So don't kick yourself too hard if you do fail. Most people take multiple attempts to pass the certification. This certification is no joke. There's really no shame in failing the certification multiple times. It kind of really speaks to that try harder factor, because it's a seriously difficult certification to pass. And through this whole journey, you have to trust in the process. Solving boxes, taking good notes, dealing with the mental side of the exam. If you do all those three, then you should have a decent chance of passing the exam, even if you're starting from a very beginner level. And finally, if you actually want to get the certification, then just take the exam as many times as it takes to pass. If you've done multiple attempts, you'll see boxes repeat eventually, and you'll finally get that attempt where everything just comes together and you pass the exam. You can easily go on Reddit, go on Discord, and you can see people who failed 3, 4, 5 times before passing. So it's very common to fail. Don't kick yourself too hard. There is a luck factor, there is a mental factor. There are a lot of things that have to come together to pass this exam. So don't kick yourself too hard and just try again, try harder, and you'll get it. So what's next for myself after the OSCP? I'll be going for the Certified Red Team Operator certification next. It is a certification that's focused on Cobalt Strike, Active Directory, and red teaming methodology. I really got a taste of red teaming when I recently did a physical penetration test where it was a lot of covert stuff where I had to gain entry into an office area, and that really kind of made me want to go towards the direction of red teaming. So this is going to be a good way to build upon my Active Directory knowledge. I've actually gone through a little bit of the CRTO course already, and I'll be posting more about that on this channel very soon as well. And after that, obviously there are more offensive security certifications. There are an endless amount of certifications, it seems, coming from offensive security these days. Just a couple of days ago, they came out with a level 200 web exploitation course and also a defensive operations course, which is kind of strange, I think, coming from offensive security. So I'll look into all those various certs from offensive security after the CRTO, and I'll consider which one I'll go for after that. And finally, if you have any questions about this whole OSCP journey, leave it in the comments down below. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. People who have been following this channel know that I read all the comments and respond to all you guys. So if you have any questions about the OSCP, any questions about career, getting into cybersecurity, leave it in the comments below and I'm happy to answer all of them. I really appreciate all you guys following this journey, all the nice comments that I've gotten, all the people who've said they've been motivated to do the OSCP, they've passed the OSCP. It's really awesome to hear all that, and actually doing this video series kind of kept me motivated throughout this whole process as well. So thank you guys all for following this channel, and this is going to be the end of the OSCP video series, but I will be coming out with more cybersecurity related videos and certification videos on this channel, so stick around. If I get enough questions in the comments below, I might make a follow-up video just to do a Q&A of the OSCP as well. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching this video. It's a pretty long one. I wanted to make it pretty comprehensive, so I hope it has been useful, and I will catch you next time.